Hi, I'm Tony McMahon. I'm going to talk to you today about monarchies that no longer exist, kings and queens who vanished from the face of the earth. And you'll be surprised at some of the countries that used to have monarchies that are now republics or dictatorships. So let me guide you through some of those countries that used to be monarchies that no longer have a king or a queen and what happened. Now, you may know me from certain documentaries on TV that have a royal flavour, such as Secrets of the Royal Palaces on Channel 5 or Private Lives of the Monarchs on Smithsonian. I do enjoy a good royal scandal. So what I'm going to look at is how over the last 80 to 100 years, a lot of monarchies have disappeared. Monarchies, especially in Europe and the Middle East. Did you know, for example, there used to be a Tsar of Bulgaria? Did you know there was a king of Egypt up until quite recently, even a king of Libya? Let's go and find out what happened to these poor people. Now, I'm here in London in the United Kingdom, and as you know, we have a king, Charles III, and just 3 years ago we all attended the funeral here of Elizabeth II, who'd been queen for a very long period of time. And if I went across the North Sea, if I headed east from where I am now, I'd find the kings of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and also the monarchies in Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, Spain, and so on. But if I went next door from Spain, I hit the country of Portugal, the Republic of Portugal, and there is no monarch there. So what happened? Well, last year I went to this tomb in Portugal, a double tomb. This is the tomb of the last but one king of Portugal, that is King Carlos, and his oldest son, Luís Felipe. So what happened? Why is this woman weeping over their tombs? Because they were assassinated while they were driving through the capital of Portugal, Lisbon, in 1908. After they were killed, a surviving son, Manuel, took power, but he wasn't really able to hold the monarchy together for very long. And there was a revolution in 1910 which overthrew him. He ended up going into exile, living in Twickenham, near to London. There were attempts to bring back the monarchy in Portugal. In 1919, there was a monarchist uprising, especially in the north of Portugal, which my step-grandfather was involved in. In fact, he went to prison briefly as a monarchist for getting involved in an attempt to overthrow the republic. So there's no monarchy in Portugal today, but let's go to a country on the other side of the Mediterranean, Egypt, which also had a monarch right up until the 1950s. In 1952, King Farouk was overthrown in a coup. Now, for a brief period of time, the monarchists tried to put his son Fuad II on the throne, but the army and the people wouldn't have it, and the royal family was forced to flee. They left Egypt, and ever since then it has become a republic. Though Fuad II, who was then only a baby when he was made king, the last king of Egypt, is still alive at the time of recording and is still trying to reclaim his throne. Right next door to Egypt, we have Libya, poor old war-torn Libya. Well, up until 1969, Libya had a king, King Idris. Now, King Idris was an old man, he had medical problems, and while he was being operated on in Turkey, he was overthrown in an army coup. And one of the people leading that coup was none other than Muammar Gaddafi. That is the President Gaddafi, who then became leader of the Libyan Republic, who was then killed rather brutally during the Arab Spring. Now, King Farouk of Egypt and King Idris of Libya managed to survive the coups that overthrew them. That was not the case with the King of Iraq. King Faisal II became King of Iraq with British support in 1939, but this was right at the beginning of the Second World War, so he had to be evacuated to England. He came back to his throne after the war, and he tried to modernise and build a grander version of Baghdad, the capital of Iraq, and he enlisted the help of such architects as Le Corbusier and Frank Lloyd Wright. But his plans to create a great Baghdad came to nothing when he was overthrown with the rest of the royal family in 1958. The story goes that the royal family collected all their jewels and riches and made their way through the back of the palace once they heard the coup was going on, made their way through the kitchens and into the back garden hoping to make their escape. But when they got to the back garden, they were met by a firing squad and the royal family were all killed. In a rather ghoulish spectacle, the Crown Prince and the King and the Prime Minister were hanged upside down in public and their bodies mutilated. The Iraqi constitutional monarchist party still campaigns for the restoration of the Iraqi monarchy, but so far the king has not been able to retake his throne. At the end of the Second World War, the Russian Red Army marched into Central and Eastern Europe, and some of the monarchs in Eastern Europe had unfortunately collaborated with the Nazis who had occupied most of Europe, or at least have been seen not to have done enough to resist the Nazis. And so in Yugoslavia, we have Marshal Tito, the communist army chief, overthrowing King Peter. And in Albania, we have Enver Hoxha, the head of the communists, overthrowing King Zog. Today, there are some in Albania who would like Crown Prince Leka II to come back and become King of Albania, but so far he has not been able to retake his throne. There are princes who claim the currently vacant thrones in Austria, Germany, Greece and Italy, but all those countries remain resolutely republics. Now, in some of those countries, the monarchs aren't even allowed to return because they're viewed as, if you want, dangerous political characters. In some of them, they have come back and maintained a reasonably low profile. It's going to be interesting to see in a volatile world whether or not there will be an increased appetite for a return to monarchy, for a return to royalty. But so far, we've seen very few kings reinstated. An exception to that will be Spain, for example, where after decades of dictatorship under General Franco, the monarchy was restored in the 1970s. And there are very active monarchist parties in many countries. I mentioned Portugal early on. The popular monarchist party is very active in Portuguese politics, though there's still no king. If there's any examples of monarchies that you'd like to raise that should have been restored, that haven't been restored, that have been overthrown, or if you've got any views on the whole question of monarchy versus republic, do comment in the comment section below. Until next time, thanks for watching and goodbye.